CEO's mute daughter's playground moment. Shocking sign language encounter with a poor boy at 3 p.m. The sun hung high in the sky, the playground alive with laughter and the screech of swings slicing through the air like it was ripped from a dream. But it wasn't just another day. No, something magical was brewing. A hush fell over the children, eyes darting towards the tall fence where Ella, the mute daughter of a billionaire CEO, stood, her hair glinting like gold in the sunlight. At that moment, she wasn't just another child. She was a mysterious figure wrapped in whispers. Rumors echoed around the park about her rare gift and ability to communicate without speaking that sent shivers of excitement among the other kids. As Ella stood there, her soft hands danced, forming words through the serene language of sign. Her gaze was one of curiosity, shimmering with an unspoken purpose. Right then, something unusual flashed across the playground. A flash of tattered sneakers and dirt-smeared hands. A boy no more than 10 darting in from the side, eyes wide as saucers, and expression a mix of intrigue and caution. He was an outsider, a poor boy who didn't belong. Yet, there was a thread of something undeniably compelling about him. The air thickened as every child leaned in, anticipation buzzing like static electricity. Would she reach out? Would the unlikeliest of friendships bloom here, under the stark blue sky? The world around them faded for a moment. It was just Ella, the boy, and the magnetic pull of the unknown. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed. Someone had fallen from the swing, a child screaming. Panic surged. Ella's attention snapped back, the moment slipping like sand through fingers. Her heart raced, a lump forming in her throat. But then it was mesmerizing. The boy stepped toward her, drawing in his breath. His hands rose, mirroring her gestures, as if they were connected by an invisible string. How could he know? Was it instinct? Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The playground was still, eyes glued to the strange yet fascinating exchange unfolding before them. Ella's hands responded with a graceful flourish. The boy's eyes joked with wonder and disbelief. Layers of tension suspended in the air like the last drop of rain before a storm, crackled with anticipation. What were they saying? What unspoken words flowed between these two unlikely souls? The murmurs grew louder as whispers of disbelief spread. Was she teaching him her language? Then, just as abruptly, the moment fractured. Without warning, Ella backed away, her hands frozen midair. The boy stood, mouth agape, his surprise morphing into fear. Confusion marred his face as he looked around, the eyes of onlookers piercing him, judging him, whispering harshly. Then, as if time had paused, a sudden gust of wind swept through the playground, carrying something. What was it? A sense of foreboding? Or was it an unseen force bringing them closer? Ella turned once more, her expression resolute, a resolve coupled with a mix of fear and determination that shot through the crowd like a jolt of electricity. What was about to happen next? Would this connection survive the judgment of the world around them? Or would it be drowned in silence again, lost among the swings and slides? The air trembled with the weight of unanswered questions, leaving every child in eager suspense for what came next. Ella's heart raced, an unsettling mixture of excitement and fear bubbling inside her. She glanced back at the boy, and for a moment, the world around them faded. Her throat tightened, not from the air, but from the weight of expectations from those watching. What would they say if she spoke to him? Didn't they still see only the daughter of a CEO, standing beside a street kid? The whispering voices began to rise like an angry tide, washing over her and wrapping her in an invisible shroud of doubt. Ella took a deep breath. She would either choose silence again or confront the invisible rope binding her to the world she didn't understand. The child on the swing had settled, and silence fell over the playground. All eyes were on her, her delicate, trembling hands hovering in the space between them. Don't. The boy's lips barely moved, but the message was loud and clear. His eyes held a desperate plea that urged her not to withdraw, not to let fear dictate her next move. Somehow, he understood, his gaze becoming a lifeline in the ocean of judgment around them. Ella felt the ground beneath her teetering. She took a step forward, her hand rising once more, pushing against the confusion that swirled around them. "Who are you?" The boy's face registered a flicker of shock, maybe even hope, as her graceful fingers formed the words. He was captivated, but he was also terrified of her, of himself, of the possible world they could craft together. "My name is Leo," he signed back, slowly and deliberately, mimicking her movements with precision. Ella's heart swelled. A connection, a spark. In that brief exchange, the universe shrank to just the two of them. Each sigh, each tremble in their fingers echoed silently. But as the children looked on, an older boy stepped forward, pushing through the crowd. Tyler was his name, known for his harsh words and even harsher pranks. His sneers sliced through the moment, shattering the fragile bond that was forming. "What are you doing? Playing make-believe with the loser? You're pathetic." The whispers shifted, some laughed, while others gasped in shock. Ella felt her heart drop. Could she let this ruin everything? She turned back to Leo, looking for reassurance, but the boy's face had twisted from hope to horror, like a balloon losing air. He scanned the crowd, and for a brief heartbeat, it was as if he would flee, vanish into the shadows from whence he came. But then, he hesitated, glancing back at her daring, brave as ever. And just like that, another gust of wind rippled through the playground, as if the universe held its breath. Ella's resolve strengthened, spiraling into something fierce and beautiful. She stepped closer to Leo and signed, "Don't listen to him. We can share this moment." The crowd fell silent, barely blinking. Tyler's eyes widened, taken aback by her defiance. But just as Leo began to sign back with hope rekindled in his expression, Ella's father's voice shattered the tension. "Ella, get away from that boy." His authority loomed over them, heavy and suffocating. Ella's heart sank, teetering on the precipice between loyalty to her father and the yearning connection with Leo. She glanced between the two, a father commanding silence and a boy seeking friendship. The choice loomed large before her. Would she choose acceptance in a world that sought to cage her spirit, or would she risk it all for an unspoken bond that promised freedom? Ella felt the weight of the eyes around her, not just on her, but on both of them. She raised her hands to sign one last word, a word that could change everything. But as she opened her mouth, the playground erupted into chaos, and in that moment, she realized that the real battle was just beginning. What would she dare to risk next? The air quivered with uncertainty, leaving every child breathless, frozen in place. Ella's heart thundered in her chest, knowing that whatever came after would define not just her story, but the very fabric of their worlds. The world spun on its axis as the moment shattered. Children screamed and scrambled, some tripping over their feet in their haste to flee the tension like startled birds taking flight. Ella could barely register the chaos. Her focus was drawn to Leo. His face was etched with fear, brows knitting as he pushed back against the wave of panic. "Stay?" She wanted to shout, but her voice felt trapped, buried beneath layers of fear and expectation. She had to hold on to this moment, or they would both slip away into the shadows of doubt, her parents' expectations, and the harsh taunts of Tyler swirling around them like vultures. And then it happened. A flash of movement caught her eye. Tyler lunged forward, anger boiling in his expression. "Look at her, acting all high and mighty with the loser," he barked, the words laced with venom. His prodding only stirred up the crowd, empowering their murmurs, and she felt their judgment clawing at her insides. Ella's heart raced. How could she stand up to him? A powerful urge to retreat gripped her, urging her to conform to her father's world. But Leo's eyes, filled with a cocktail of emotions, fear, anger, and determination, anchored her. He needed her, and maybe, just maybe, she needed him too. In one swift motion, she stepped between Leo and Tyler, defiant and shaking but resolute. "Stop it," she signed vehemently, her hands flying through the air. The crowd ogled, eyes widening, absorbing this unconventional confrontation. Tyler smirked, his confidence teetering. "What's the matter? Can't handle a little truth?" He leaned closer, pushing the space between them tighter, a predator stalking its prey. Ella longed to explain her feelings, to articulate everything swirling in her heart. But somehow, words felt inadequate, lost on her twisted tongue. Instead, she held up her hands with fierce resolve. I'm not ashamed of him. You can't scare me away. From behind, her father moved, his frame larger than life and authority radiating from him. Ella, enough of this nonsense. His voice cracked like a whip, sending energy through the playground like static. Instant dread coiled in her stomach. But what if this was the moment to break free? To defy the chains of expectation that shackled her? The very thought pulsed with adrenaline. The other children shifted restlessly. Their eyes bounced between her and Leo, their own beliefs perhaps wavering. In that instant, beneath the pressure, a bravery unfurled within her. She turned to Leo, her expression fierce yet reassuring. We need to show them who we are. Together. She reached out, her fingers trembling slightly, but every bit of her intentional. Leo mirrored her movement, his hand connecting with hers. The crowd held their breath. Now, Ella signed, the energy crackling between them like a live wire. But before anything else could unfold, another scream erupted, slicing through the air like a siren. It came from the swings, where a little girl had dropped her ice cream cone, and chaos was brewing anew. The eruption of laughter cut through the weight of tension, sending a shudder through the crowd. For a fleeting second, the spotlight shifted away from them, the eyes of the playground drifting to something easier, lighter. Tyler wore a knowing smirk, aware that the moment was slipping, but he was also fueled by a deeper understanding of power. Ella clenched Leo's hand tighter, the spark between them still glowing but flickering. She knew this was not just a battle against Tyler, it was a test of her own will, her resolve, and whether she would break under the pressure or rise up. As Tyler regained his confidence, tension crackled in the air. With one last look at Leo, Ella felt the pull of countless decisions behind her, and the stakes had only climbed. Suddenly, a figure stepped into the perimeter, a menacing presence that none of them had anticipated. Ella's breath hitched as she recognized the face. What was he doing here? And were her fears about to become reality? In that moment, she realized the real battle was not just between friend and foe, but against the very blood running through her veins. Just what would happen next? Ella's heart hammered in her chest as her eyes locked onto the figure. It was her older brother, Dylan, striding into the chaos like he owned the place. Tall and imposing, the air around him shifted. His presence cut through the laughter, commanding attention. What are you doing here? She whispered under her breath, panic clawing at her throat. He wasn't supposed to be at the playground, especially not when tension was riding so high. Go back, Tyler shouted, waving his arms as if to disperse a swarm of bees. Ella's grip on Leo tightened. She felt a wave of protectiveness wash over her, but it collided with dread. Dylan had an uncanny way of coercing people with just a look, and she could see the uncertain glances exchanged amongst the kids. Ella, Dylan barked, his voice slicing through the anxious chatter. Get over here. The crowd shifted, whispers threading through the air like sharp shards. Ella felt the heat of their stares, the silent judgment coiling tighter around her limbs. You're making a scene, Dylan continued, his words practically dripping with disdain, but Ella stood, rooted in place, her heart thrumming a wild rhythm in her chest. She had almost allowed herself to be swept away with Leo, to seize that spark of courage they had begun to kindle. Yet now, with Dylan here, that flame flickered dangerously close to extinguishing. Leave him alone, she shouted before she could stop herself, her voice breaking the fragile lull. It was reckless and impulsive, words tumbling from her mouth like stones off a cliff. The crowd recoiled, surprised at her outburst. Even Tyler looked taken aback. Though a smirk crept across his face, Dylan's gaze narrowed. You don't get it, do you? His tone lowered as he stepped closer, the menace in his presence tightening like a vice around her heart. This isn't a fairy tale. You're in over your head. Ella felt all color drain from her face. She turned to Leo, hoping to find strength in his eyes. He stood behind her, vulnerable yet determined, mirroring the chaos in her heart. They were in this together, but with Dylan in the mix, she didn't know if they had the upper hand anymore. What does he mean? Leo signed, his expression intense. Maybe it's time I tell everyone who you really are, Dylan said, his voice chillingly casual, as if they were discussing lunch plans, not about to set this place ablaze with his words. The kids shifted uneasily, eager to see where this was headed. Ella's throat felt dry. No, please don't. I think it's about time they see what a perfect little princess you are, he continued, full of ridicule. After all, Daddy Dearest wouldn't want his little girl hanging out with someone like him. Rumbling in the bond of the crowd grew, gasps and murmurs swirled like a gust of wind. Ella felt the pulse of horror race through her veins. You don't understand. We're friends. She shot back, her hands signing fiercely, hoping to convey solidarity. Friends? Tyler laughed mockingly, until he caught Dylan's eye and held back. In that moment, he understood the power that stood behind Dylan. Fear flickered through the air, mirrored in the eyes of the onlookers. You think this is friendship? Dylan's voice dripped with venom. You're just throwing away your future for some poor boy. Figures. Ella felt the ground shift beneath her. This wasn't just a playground spat, it was a full-scale assault on everything she'd ever wanted to be. The barriers of her family and the weights of her brother's power felt crushingly real. She was suddenly aware of the walls she had built, fragile and cracking, threatening to collapse at any moment as the crowd leaned in. The tension electrified the air. She could see the flames of gossip igniting, each word potentially carving deeper ruts in her life. Gritting her teeth, desperation clawed at her chest. Could she hold on in the storm Dylan was conjuring? Don't listen to them, don't listen. She whispered, hoping that the world would just fade away, leaving only the truth of what they shared, only Leo's hand in hers. But as Dylan's words lurked hungrily in the shadows, a new fear emerged in her heart. What if she lost herself in this battle? What if everything she thought she knew was about to change? Ella sensed a pivotal moment approaching, one that would shatter the fragile balance of their lives. Would she have the courage to fight back, or was she already outmatched? Ella's breath caught in her throat. The crowd was a sea of eyes, each one an unrelenting reminder of the looming storm. Dylan took another step forward, a predator closing in on his prey. You think you can just ignore the truth? Dylan spat, his face a mask of disdain. Ella's heart raced. He could unveil everything about her life, shatter the identity she'd tried to build on her own terms. Panic surged like a tidal wave, threatening to wash away her resolve. Knowing she had to act fast, Ella turned her attention to Leo. She locked eyes with him, her expression pleading for him to read the urgency in her gaze, to understand they couldn't let Dylan win this game. Leo, with his innocent strength, squeezed her hand tighter, anchoring her in this whirlwind of chaos. Think about your family, Ella, Dylan continued. His voice echoed, sharper than glass. You think they'd approve of you hanging out with a kid like him? Look at his clothes. He gestured dismissively at Leo, who stood tall yet fragile, his heart on his sleeve, unyielding in the face of adversity. The crowd buzzed stormily, an angry sea lapping against the shores of her sanity. Stay strong, Leo signed, his eyes fierce with a glow of determination. Ella felt a surge of warmth, but it faltered when she witnessed Tyler grinning maliciously at her brother's theatrics. Just let it go, she whispered, but deep down, she knew how futile that plea was. Dylan had wrapped the tale of their lives so tightly that unraveling it felt impossible. But we're not just friends. Ella shouted suddenly, her voice ringing clear, her hands flying through signs as she spoke. It was a moment of clarity, a stand against the tide of shame and fear. You don't get to decide who I am. Ella noticed the crack in Dylan's confident facade. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. His grip on the narrative threatened to slip as murmurs rippled through the audience. But she couldn't let that be enough. Your lies can't hold me back, she added, channeling strength that began to build like embers igniting a flame. There was power in her rebellion, but she felt raw and exposed as the onlookers stared even harder, awaiting the next twist of this burgeoning reality. What do you know? Dylan sneered, but his bravado wavered. He was losing control, and she could taste the triumph on the edge of her tongue. But tension still clamped around her heart. Then, with a sharp intake of breath, Dylan threw a bombshell. You might be willing to throw away your future for this boy, but that's nothing compared to what I'll tell the world about your mother's accident. Shockwaves rippled through the crowd. Ella froze. It was a tactic she'd never expected. Stop, she cried out, her mind racing faster than her heart. But those chilling words had already taken root. burrowing deep into the hearts of those around her. The weight of silence crashed down like a falling boulder. What does he mean by that? The whispers circulated, an unsettling buzz rising like smoke. Ella felt the air grow thick, panic lacing through her veins. A chilling realization followed Dylan's threat. The stakes had just risen to levels she couldn't grasp. With all eyes on her, the question hung in the air, sharp and defining. Who is really in control? Dylan stood center stage, a cruel smile twisting his lips, betraying the glee of having the upper hand. Just wait till everyone finds out the truth, Dylan said, his eyes shimmering with malice. Ella's spirit clashed violently with fear. She could feel it within her. If she didn't act now, what was left of her life would be scattered like ashes in the wind. Could she turn the tide when everything she held dear was on the line? Or would this moment of revelation push her deeper into the darkness? The crowd leaned closer, tension crackling in the distance. Ella knew one thing for sure: she had to face Dylan head-on, or risk losing everything. The moment for action was arriving, and with it, her future dangled by the barest thread. Would she rise, or would she fall? The silence wrapped around Ella like a suffocating blanket, heavy with uncertainty, thick with fear. Every heart in that crowd pulsed in rhythm with hers, a chaotic melody of anticipation. She felt Leo's hand tighten around hers, a lifeline in the storm, but his gentle strength was no match for the onslaught of dread that washed over her. "What are you hiding, Ella?" Dylan fired. Each word dripped with venom, aimed to inflict maximum damage. "Isn't at time everyone knew what really happened to your mother? The accident wasn't an accident, was it?" His voice climbed, seizing the attention of each person standing before them. Ella's stomach twisted as if it could fold in on itself. Memories flooded her, blurred images of sirens, tears, and muffled voices. What she had spent years trying to leave in the shadows now clawed its way back into the spotlight. The crowd's whispers grew louder, a cacophony of shock, judgment, and morbid curiosity. "No," she screamed, the rawness of the denial reverberating through her bones. But it was too late. Dylan had cast the stone, and the ripples surged. She could see it in the faces around her, fascination mixed with horror, the thrill of a tragedy unfolded before their eyes, drawing them in. Leo's grip tightened to a point of pain, grounding her. "We can't let him control this. Fight," he signed urgently, his eyes wide, imploring. Ella blinked hard and shook her head, wrestling with the paralyzing fear that threatened to consume her. "Ella," Dylan sneered, leaning closer, "you'd better fess up before I do it for you. Tell them about the night." He paused, letting his words hang, pregnant with implications. "Tell them how you were never the same again." A wave of nausea pounded through her. She had always been taught to fear the truth. This was her secret, cradled in aching silence. The thought of unveiling that night, of sharing the raw pain, felt like standing naked in a blizzard. Her eyes darted around, meeting flickers of sympathy and excitement, the worst kind. Officers of judgment were ready, lurking just outside the fringes of her reality. She swallowed hard, feeling like she was suffocating on the weight of that night she so desperately wanted to forget. "Ella, don't let him win," Leo urged silently, his eyes fierce with resolution. "No more lies. No more fear." The words burst from her in a rush, as if exhaling years of pent-up despair. "You think you can control my narrative, Dylan? You think I'm afraid of you? I'm not that scared little girl anymore." There was a shift in the crowd, an electric current. Eyebrows lifted, whispers stilled. Dylan looked taken aback, momentarily off guard. But his confusion morphed into rage, and he stepped closer, fingers curling into a fist at his side. "You want to play this game? Fine," he growled, his face twisted in a mask of contempt. "But don't act surprised when it all blows up in your face. You think you know shame? You have no idea what I'm capable of." In that split second, the tension spiraled, reaching a crescendo. Ella saw flickers of uncertainty flash across the faces of her peers. They were beginning to see Dylan for who he truly was, a coward wielding threats like a weapon. "Let the truth come out, then," she challenged, her heart pounding like a drum. "But I refuse to be your pawn." Dylan's face paled for a moment, and in that brief window, a sliver of doubt lit up Ella's resolve. But before she could sense victory, Tyler strutted forward, a serpent slithering into the scene. "You think you're brave, huh? Let us see how long you can hold on to that courage when the truth comes crawling back. Shivers raced down Ella's spine. Tyler's words were a dagger, aimed to stab directly at her insecurities. What would happen when the truth finally surfaced? How would it collide with her new reality? The one painstakingly crafted from her broken past. The crowd held its breath, a collective intake that blurred the line between conflict and confession. Ella stood at the edge of an abyss, heart racing, knowing the moment for revelation was nearing. Questions bubbled in her mind. Would she take the leap into the unknown, or would fear tether her feet? As she steadied her resolve, she prepared to unveil a truth Dylan never could control, one that might just shatter everything. But before she could speak, a distant sound broke through the tension, a reverberating boom that echoed from the edges of the event, stealing every gaze and silencing the crowd. What could possibly happen next that might change everything in this moment of confrontation? The sound ricocheted through the air, a thunderous crack that sent shockwaves across the assembled crowd. Ella's heart lurched, panic blooming in her chest as she instinctively stepped back, nearly losing her footing. Gasps erupted around her, eyes widening with a mix of disbelief and terror. What was that? Leo whispered, his face drawn tight with concern. I don't know, Ella stammered, her gaze darting toward the source of the noise, now a whirlwind of shouting and chaos. The calm facade of the evening had shattered, the possibility of truth swallowed by the uncertainty of danger. Dylan's smirk faltered. For the first time, a flicker of fear danced across his features. This isn't over, Ella, he started, but then turned abruptly, following the tide of people shuffling away from the scene. Ella couldn't move. A tense energy pulsed between her and the crowd, a collective unwillingness to speak, to ask questions. The once jubilant evening was now a scene stolen by confusion and dread. Stay here, Leo instructed, gripping her hand tighter as he peered past the clusters of murmuring students. There was an urgency in his eyes, a need for her to remain grounded, though the very ground beneath them felt unstable, but Ella felt drawn to the noise. It was a siren call of chaos, a magnetic pull that demanded her attention. I have to know what happened, she insisted, her voice barely a whisper above the din. Ella, wait, Leo pleaded, but she was already breaking free, weaving through the throng of bodies. The sound of pounding feet echoed, screams and shouts intertwining, creating a discordant symphony that clawed at her sanity. Just ahead, she glimpsed the emerging shadows of authority officers arrived. Their blue uniforms flashed through the crowd as they scrambled to maintain order. Ella's heart hammered. Something catastrophic must have happened to spark such upheaval. Suddenly, a figure stumbled toward her. It was Clara, her close friend, face pale and panicked. Ella, you won't believe it. There was an explosion. She struggled to catch her breath as she grabbed Ella by the shoulders. At the pier. It was so loud. They're saying someone set it off. Ella's blood ran cold. The pier was where she had spent countless summers, where laughter filled the air and sunsets painted the sky. What do you mean, set it off? Ella managed to choke out, her instincts flaring. A single scream pierced through the confusion, yanking Ella's focus to the outstretching shadows. Something was happening. The officers had cleared a pathway, and she could see the chaos beyond. Debris scattered everywhere, panic etched on faces. Ella. Leo's voice rose above the chaos, cutting through the confusion like a knife. We need to go? Now. But she couldn't tear her gaze away from the scene. It felt as if something was breaking inside her, something she had worked so hard to keep hidden. With every bit of her being, she wanted to turn away, to run, but then she saw him, lying amid the wreckage, a figure twisted amidst chaos. Fear and curiosity battled within her. Was that a boy? Was he hurt? The image electrified her senses, grounding her fully in the present moment. Questions swirled in her mind, propelling her forward while others fled. Ella, Leo shouted again, desperation rising in his tone, but she was already moving, feet carrying her as adrenaline ignited her senses. Wait, I can't leave, she yelled back over her shoulder, knowing he would not easily let go. Another echoed crash reverberated through the air like an ominous echo, and she froze. Had this all been orchestrated? Was Dylan behind this? As she fought to approach the scene, a sense of resolve crystallized within her. Not just for herself, but for that stranger who might be trapped. This could be the moment everything altered. But just as she dared to take a step forward, a clamorous explosion rang out again, closer this time, a roar that sent the crowd scattering like leaves in a storm. With mounting dread, Ella looked to Leo, fear watering her eyes. What do we do? And as they scanned the chaos around them, one thought echoed in her mind: what would it mean if the truth truly did come out in the heart of this catastrophe? A chill swept through her as the implications settled in, heavy and ominous. What secrets awaited them when the dust finally cleared? The chaos around Ella felt suffocating, as if the very air was thick with fear and confusion. She stood frozen, her heart pounding in sync with the distant booms that rang through the night. Leo's grip tightened on her wrist, a grounding force amid the frantic backdrop of the crowd. "Ella, please." His voice was a low murmur, almost drowned out by the frantic cries and shattered glass. But there was something fierce in his eyes, a pleading that told her to look away, to protect herself from the horror unfolding before them. But fear had a way of igniting curiosity. Ella's gaze was magnetized to where the debris lay. More people were scrambling toward the wreckage, and somewhere beneath the rubble, she suspected there might be a truth she couldn't ignore. The flash of blue lights flickered, police setting barriers, faces grim. She spotted Clara still nearby, her hands shaking as she pointed toward the scene. "We have to help them," Clara shouted, uncertainty clawing at her voice. "They might need help." A shout erupted from the officers. "Everyone move back. Evacuate the area now." The urgency in their tone intensified the energy of the crowd. Panic spread like wildfire as some stumbled back, but Ella felt a different tug and need to press forward. "Ella, stop." Leo yanked her back. His expression had shifted from worry to something much darker. "This is dangerous." But the moment was slipping away. Ella's legs were moving before she could think twice, weaving through the broken crowd and the sudden influx of emergency responders. The shrill cries of sirens echoed in the air, merging with the terrified murmurs of bystanders. She inched closer, her vision sharpened amid the chaos. A group of teenagers huddled to the side. They were peering into a twisted mass of metal and debris, horror etched on their faces. "Is anyone even alive?" one of them whispered, and Ella felt a chill wash over her. A voice cut through her thoughts. "Come on, move it. Get out of the way." An officer was shouting at them, urgency bleeding into his tone. "It's not safe here. I can't leave him like this." Ella cried out, but as she looked back to the wreckage, Leo's grip was firm, unrelenting. "Ella, please. It's too risky." His voice was strained, filled with desperation, but she could only see the figure still unmoving, barely visible. Then she heard it. A faint moan, a sound so soft yet filled with agony. It vibrated through her bones. "Help." The word was barely there, but to her, it was a lifeline. Without waiting for Leo's reply, she broke free from his grasp. Every step she took felt like a challenge against the very laws of fear that gripped them all. She could hear Leo calling, his voice a distant echo. "Ella, don't." With her heart in her throat, Ella lunged toward the wreckage, heart racing as the acrid smell of smoke stung her nose. The world around her faded, narrowing down to the sounds of chaos enveloping her, the screams, the sirens, the fear. As she neared the fallen debris, she caught sight of a boy, face smeared with dirt, eyes wide with fear. They were locked onto hers, a spark of connection amid the madness. "Help me," he rasped, desperation etched on his face. Every instinct within Ella screamed for her to act. She bent down, unsure of what she could do. "I'm here. I'm going to help you." But before she could touch him, the ground beneath her shifted. A tremor shook the pavement as another explosion roared nearby, and time seemed to stretch tragically. Ella's heart dropped in sync with the crumbling of a wall nearby. The boy's eyes grew even wider, panic flashing through him. What now? She thought, dread creeping in. What if she couldn't reach him in time? As she took a shaky breath, the darkness of uncertainty wrapped around her. But then came that voice again, slicing through the panic with a new intensity. "Ella, get out of there." The crowd started to scream again, this time louder, more fervent. "Explosives! Get back!" In that moment, the truth beamed forward. The chaos hadn't merely swallowed them. It had hidden something far more sinister. Ella jerked back, heart racing. What if this had all been planned? Was Dylan behind this destruction? The shocking realization settled over her like ice. How deep did this danger run? With dread winding tighter around her chest, Ella realized the truth was lurking just out of reach, waiting for the moment she would be forced to confront it. Was she ready for whatever lay ahead? Ella's world tilted as the earth trembled beneath her feet. She stumbled back, heart hammering against her ribcage like a wild animal trying to escape. The boy's eyes were still locked onto hers, filled with a mixture of hope and fear that sliced through the heavy chaos surrounding them. "Please," he pleaded again, his voice barely rising above the cacophony of sirens and screams. She glanced back towards Leo, who was now frantically pushing through the crowd, his face a mask of desperation. "Ella, get away from there," he shouted, urgency spilling over his words. Yet, his alarm only fueled her determination. She couldn't abandon him, not now, not when he was suffering right in front of her. The air had thickened with smoke, swirling like a beast in the night. Ella fought through the haze, instinct guiding her closer to the boy who seemed to shimmer on the edge of despair. All she wanted was to reach him and pull him from his prison of twisted metal and rubble. But then, another roar split the air. A burst of fire erupted from nearby, turning chaos into an inferno. She flinched as a fiery wave licked at her feet, heat washing over her like a consuming tide. Her breath caught. Panic surged. "Get back!" An officer shouted, his face white with terror. But Ella was rooted to the ground. The boy's fear mirrored her own, and she couldn't turn away. In that frozen heartbeat, clarity struck. This was bigger than a single explosion. A dangerous game was unfolding, and she was caught in it. She thought of Dylan, the whispers she had overheard, the anger in his eyes. They were not safe. None of them were. "Ella," Leo shouted again, desperation threading through each syllable. "I'm not leaving him," she yelled back, her voice shaking with resolve. "Help me." Suddenly, she caught sight of movement. A group of teenagers had joined her, their eyes wild yet captivated. They scrambled forward, intent on finding a way to help. The collective sense of urgency crackled in the air, a loud siren of solidarity amid the chaos. "We need to lift that," one girl cried, urgency fueling her every word as she pointed toward a large piece of debris blocking the boy. They joined forces, adrenaline igniting the frenzied attempt to rescue him. Each of them grabbed an edge, struggling together against the weight in that moment. Ella felt a spark of hope blooming within her chest. They were a team. They wouldn't let fear dictate their actions. They would fight through the chaos and save him. Together, but just as they began to move the wreckage, the ground shook violently again, sending tremors that rattled their bones. The structure groaned, and dust rose like a living thing, choking the air. Ella's heart plummeted. "Hold on," she shouted, the urgency in her voice brightening like a flare in the dark night. "We're almost there." But before she could even comprehend the next catastrophe, a deafening blast echoed, and another explosion erupted just feet away. Time froze. Everything around her transformed into a swirling tempest of flames and chaos. Terror gripped her throat. What had she done? In that split second, she met the boy's eyes once more, realizing the truth. Both of their fates hung in the balance. Could they escape? She was losing her nerve, the ground seeming to fall away beneath her. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out, thick with authority and panic. "Ella, let go. Get out now." It was Leo, struggling to make his way through the haze. His face was twisted with worry, and the fear radiating from him sent a shiver down her spine. She felt torn between saving someone and the safety of her heart. Before she could respond, darkness swallowed her world. The explosion sent debris exploding outward, and walls that once secured the lives inside were reduced to mere memories. Ella couldn't breathe. Just then, in the shadows of the chaos, she caught a quick glimpse of someone watching her, someone with a sinister smile and familiar eyes. Dylan. Her breath caught as the implications crashed over her like a tsunami. Everything was connected, and innocence was about to pay the price. What had once felt like a simple rescue had turned into something much more insidious. How deep did this go? And what did they really want? Held captive by this new fear, Ella felt the walls close in once more. Was she ready for the truth that was waiting just beyond the flames? The dust began to settle, but the chaos kept swirling in Ella's heart. Her breath came in short gasps as the moment stretched, terrifying and vivid. Everything was layered with panic. Leo's shouts, the cries for help, the rolling smoke that choked the air. But amid the confusion, she stood her ground. She tightened her grip on a tattered edge of debris and summoned every ounce of strength. Help! The boy's voice rang out again, desperate and raw. Ella's heart clenched. She could feel his pain thrumming through the air like a drumbeat. Don't let go, she yelled back, forcing courage into her words. With each passing second, the world swirled around them. Leo pushed and pulled through the rubble-strewn chaos. Urgency etched across his face. The flames danced dangerously close, the heat pressing against her skin. Ella, please, he cried, desperation clawing at his tone. She didn't dare look away from the boy's gaze, pleading for salvation. Time seemed to collapse around her, summoning everything she feared into one giant wave crashing over her heart. Would this boy's life end here? Was it really worth facing the danger when her own safety dangled precariously? Just then, clarity surged in Ella, a fierce resolve igniting within her chest. We're going to get you out, she shouted, her voice bleeding strength, and at that moment, she meant it with every fiber of her being. Suddenly, Leo appeared beside her. His hands joined hers, pulling with fervor on the debris blocking the boy's escape. The crackling sounds of fire and distant sirens fell into silence, leaving just the heartbeat of their determination echoing in the thickening air. 3, 2, 1. Leo counted, and in unison, they lifted the weight, muscles straining under the pressure. The rush of adrenaline empowered them, and as the last piece of twisted metal finally gave way, a glimmer of sunlight spilled through. They gasped, letting the boy stumble free. His frame was frail. Dirt and fear clung to his skin. As he fell into Ella's arms, a wave of relief crashed over them, carrying her heart higher into the sky. Just as the moment began to paint a brighter future, a sharp laugh sliced through the echoes of relief, a laugh Ella recognized all too well. Look at you, the hero of a tragedy. Dylan's sneer wove itself into the atmosphere, poisonous and cruel. Ella turned, rage swelling in her chest. This isn't a game, Dylan. You don't get to play with lives like this. Play? Oh, I'm not the one playing, he retorted, his eyes glinting with an almost boiling madness. I'm simply exposing truths that your little world has kept hidden. Shudder after shudder of realization clawed through her. What did you do? Ella stepped forward, a fire igniting in her spirit, fueled by the boy she had saved, who now stood trembling beside her. Dylan's gaze shifted, turning away momentarily as if the weight of her words bore down on him. You think your little rebellion can stand against me? This was never just about you. It's about your whole family. Stop hiding behind words. You're the coward. Her voice rang out, bold and defiant. Coward? Dylan laughed, but there was a quiver beneath it, fighting for control. Look around, Ella. You think you're different? You think helping this boy changes anything? Ella felt the ground shift again, the echoes of their shared history swirling in the air, a reminder of every time she had backed down. But she would not cower this time. She was stronger than that, stronger than her family's expectations or Dylan's sick games. Everything changes when you choose empathy over shame, she insisted, every word a stance. I won't let you take that away from us. What a lovely sentiment, Dylan taunted, his mockery sharp enough to cut through the air. But Ella realized that she had stepped into a power that wasn't solely her own. She glanced at Leo, at the boy behind them, and the undeniable strength of their bond spread through her. Around them, the onlookers began to murmur, comprehension blooming as they started to see Dylan for what he truly was. Shifting in the crowd, secrets and whispers unfurled like wings, and with it, the quiet power of truth began to emerge. You can't control us anymore, Ella asserted, her voice steady, a command that demanded change. As if in response, the boy beside her whispered, I don't want to be ashamed. Ella's heart shared that burden. She had carried it for too long to in that moment. A spark ignited in those surrounding them. Those who had once stood silent now began to murmur words of courage, voices threading through the fabric of fear like vibrant colors in a dark tapestry. Dylan felt the shift, his bravado fainting as a shadow of vulnerability momentarily flickered over him. You think this is over? Yes. Ella's voice rose, audacious and fierce. This is when we start fighting back. The cries behind them grew in volume, fueled by that shared energy. Leo took a step beside her, unsure but unyielding. They were a unit now, a collective heart ignited by raw conviction. As chaos ebbed, whispers began to fill the air, growing louder, empowering. They spoke of truths unveiled and lives intertwined. The playground, the pier, the weight of their burdens all began to shift in a direction Ella had only begun to understand. Today was a chance to change everything, shatter chains remaining hidden, and unveil the ties that bound them to the past. Don't run from the truth anymore, Ella proclaimed, her voice a beacon lighting the way forward. The weight of family reputation, of expectations, dimmed in the face of true connection, a connection with Leo and the promise of a stronger life ahead. Dylan faltered, and she could see the uncertainty etched in his features. And at that moment, the playground transformed from a scene of chaos into one of resolve. They saw Dylan falter, an imperceptible shift, and suddenly Ella felt lighter as her heart raced. Hope washed over her. They could redefine what it meant to be brave and strong, no longer lost in shame or guilt. They had a chance to light the path for one another, to grow in the beauty of connection. Ella turned to look at Leo, and through their shared gaze, the world held its breath. Together? She asked, her voice firm yet soft. Together. With those words, her heart soared like the sun breaking through the clouds. The bond had forged itself anew, a testament to the resilience of friends, families, and futures intertwined. And as the dust settled, hope began to bloom. They all took a step forward, toward the unknown but lighter with the freedom of truth. Now, the world was theirs to reshape, and they were ready to fight back. This was it. They were reborn from the chaos, ready to discover the magic of their newfound connection, and for once, the future looked bright. Don't let this moment slip through your fingers. You need to subscribe now, because we have more incredible stories coming your way that you want to miss. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support for stories built on connection and courage. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about what's next for Ella, Leo, and the rest of the crew. Let your voice be heard. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans like you understand the importance of backing this journey. Let us spread the word.